Hey team, welcome back to another video. This one is going to be a recap of a couple of dives that I went for over the last couple of weeks. One shore dive at one of the first ever spots that I went diving, and a boat dive out to some offshore pinnacles out in the Bay of Islands. I'm also going to throw in a bit of footage of a beautiful spot out in the Bay of Islands that I got to explore one day, and a little bit of a disaster that happened while I was filming there. As always, if you like the content, make sure you subscribe and go and hit that like button. The first dive is from a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't been out since before Christmas and I was dying to get out. So I went and picked up my mate Finbar and we drove out to the spot. We got geared up and walked into the little beach where you get into the water and got straight into it. Just after we jumped in, I was checking up in some shallow cracks and ran into this octopus out in the open, which decided to show off a few of its tricks to get away from me. As I moved further around the coast, I encountered this large stingray which I spent a bit of time with before moving on. I was still up in the shallows swimming out to some better ground and ran into a school of piper with a couple of decent sized fish in the group, so I decided to test my aim and give piper a try as I'd heard they're great eating. So I managed to get a shot into this one here and tucked him straight onto ice in my boogie board chili bag float, which I was using at this spot as it can be fairly sharky. And actually after we got out, a couple who had been walking up on the cliffs above us said they'd seen two bronzies cruising up in the shallows where we were diving. After the piper, we decided to make the swim out to a rock that sits a few hundred meters off the coast to try some deeper dives and potentially get into some kingfish. Unfortunately, the kingies didn't show up, but I did manage to take this kahawai before we headed back. On the way back I found this rock which was loaded with crays, but apart from one small one right at the front, all of them were too deep under the rock for me to reach. In the end I decided to pull the one at the front, but after measuring it, it was just undersized, so I put it back to grow a little bit more. So that wraps it up for the first dive. Definitely not the most productive, but good to get a few fish for dinner and interact with a few different animals while I was out there. The next dive is from about a week ago. I got asked to come out for a boat dive with a couple of mates, with a few other divers on a second boat as well. We headed up to some good offshore pinnacles hoping to get into some kingfish. We had a good run out and even ran into one of the Bay of Islands' resident bottlenose dolphin pods. Once we got out to the first spot, we jumped in and I went ahead and missed my first 2 shots. One on a good trevally and the other point blank on a pink maumau. I chilled out for a bit and after a few more drops managed to hit a fish and got this pinky on the board. The spot we were diving has a few local New Zealand fur seals that like to hang out there, and we lucked into getting a swim with this one, who was pretty relaxed and playful. We spent a bit more time diving and I managed to get onto another pink maumau. Dive bombing from directly above like this in open water is definitely not how I'd recommend trying to shoot pinkies, as they tend to keep moving deeper as you come down to them and you can end up going much deeper than planned. This time it worked out okay for me, but getting onto some structure and letting them come to you is generally a better tactic. We decided to move to a different spot as there was no real sign of any bigger species here. At the second spot we started on the sheltered side of the island and it was decently fishy, but still quiet on any bigger fish. I decided to move round to the other side, which was pretty hard work with current and a pretty messy sea state, but very fishy with schools of blue maumau, kahawai and trevally everywhere. Even though it was super fishy and the current was ripping, there was no sign of any kingfish, and I just managed to trevally before we decided to call it and move back into the islands for some shelter and a lunch stop on the way home. Overall a good day out with some nice fishy diving, and we got another visit from the same dolphin pod on the way home. A few days later I managed to get out on a little hike out on one of the islands while on a break from work, and I took the cameras with me. I hope you enjoy this beautiful spot as much as I did. as you can see, disaster struck while I was filming, and I unfortunately did crash my drone into a tree. It did sustain a little bit of damage to one of the arms, as in it's fully broken, and I'll need to be getting that fixed soon. I did still enjoy my adventure, and finding that amazing big pohotakawa tree was great. Thanks as always for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.